we will begin with, as I had mentioned, I am not going to introduce anybody. All of you are known, and we don't want to waste time on that. And Dr. Joshi, you have the field. Yours is India internal, eh? Go ahead. 7 minutes.
Well, will probably do India internal and go a little bit here and there. Okay.
Whatever you can cover everything, whatever you want to solo.
Yeah, but I'll maintain 7 minutes.
Okay.
So 2025 was began the year with the Mahakumbh and the completion of the Ram Temple in Ayodhya. It was also the year in which India won the Women's Cricket World Cup for the first time. But it was not the best one for India's security. The country suffered ghastly terrorist attacks at the Baisaran Meadow in Pahalgam on April 24th. Then a blast near Red Fort in New Delhi on November 10th not only revealed a major conspiracy, but the fact that things were not all that good in Kashmir. The Pahalgam incident led to a short war with Pakistan. Fortunately, the hostilities ended soon, but as the Prime Minister Modi declared, they have only been suspended. Terrorism clearly remains a challenge, as does the fact that normality in Kashmir is a far cry, even after the derogation of Article 370. However, a plus point was the elimination of key Maoist leaders in central India. Terrorism remains a challenge for two reasons. One is Pakistan. Having been bested in the May 25 war, the generals would like to hit back. But knowing the price, they will continue to take recourse to proxy war. The other danger comes from Bangladesh. There, you can be sure that there will be a negative impact on India's security in the northeast. As many as 5 Pakistani military delegations have visited the country, as well as the ISI chief in the past 1 year. Through its victories in Haryana and Bihar State Assembly election in 2025, the BJP's electoral fortunes were revised. Because, if you remember, in 2024, they had been dented in the general elections. Election-wise, 2026 is important, since it will see the state assembly elections in Assam, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and West Bengal. Note that 3 of them are ruled by the opposition, and you can be sure that the BJP will do its best to win them. For India, there are other important benchmarks in 2026. One is the beginning of the national census that should have been held in 2021, but was postponed because of COVID. Such an exercise which covers each household is vital to understand what is happening in this vast country in terms of population, housing, health, employment, and so on. Now, you know that we have been, in some ways, flying blind because we don't have this information. Without doubt, this will give a boost to the quality of governance thereafter. Amongst the various events, an important one I'm flagging is the India AI Impact Summit, announced by the Prime Minister in 2026. This is scheduled for February in New Delhi. This is the first ever global AI summit hosted in the global south. New Delhi also hopes to finish its long-running negotiation with the US on its bilateral trade agreements by March 2026, along with similar agreements with EU, Qatar, Oman, Canada, and Mexico. Among the important events will also be the International Fleet Review and Naval Conclave in Visakhapatnam in February 26. This will include the Milan exercise as well. Participating will be the navies of over 50 countries. 2026 will also be the year of the fourth Indian nuclear ballistic missile submarine, INS Ardhyaman, will be commissioned, giving some significant boost to India's nuclear deterrent capacity. This is a bigger submarine than the previous ones, so it will be a big boost. Two other countries, of course, affect our security, China and the US. As for China, there seems to be no immediate threat since India continues to match the Chinese buildup along the LAC. However, in 2026, India needs to work on the second leg of its Ladakh policy by pushing for de-escalation. There are already aspects of disengagement that need to be completed. The no patrol zones created in 2020, 2022, these must be dissolved because they go against our interests. De-escalation would target additional forces that both sides have brought up to the LAC. As for the US, for more than 20 years, the US has formed an important geopolitical pillar of India's global security outlook. But the developments of 2025 have undermined the trust on which this was based. The US now has a new national security strategy, which actually has very little to say about India, except as an economic partner. US ties with Pakistan and China suggests that we need to exercise abundant caution in dealing with the US. Indeed, 2026 must be the year in which India must work out new geopolitical orientations to replace the one lost with the US. Besides emphasizing multipolarity, it also needs to take steps to boost the country's defense expenditure in keeping with the trends around the world. Multipolarity needs to be backed by a robust self-defense capacity, and the Modi government must walk the talk instead of mainly relying on grand announcements. Defense expenditure as a proportion of GDP has been declining in the Modi years. And so there is, around the world, defense expenditures are increasing. So India needs to watch out for that. See, today also there was some grand announcement of, AON. So the various papers carried it, but it means nothing. The action on necessity is a meaningless phrase in defense. In 2025, despite setbacks in the security arena, actually India did quite well geopolitically. For one, the US estrangement led India to rediscover the virtues of strategic autonomy. Looking at 2026, there are expectations of a Quad summit in New Delhi, though there are question marks about the presence of Donald Trump here. Now, while I'm concluding, I'd just like to bring forward a more quirky development, a interesting development in 2026. That is that semaglutide, an anti-obesity drug, will go off patent in 2026. So in 2026, semaglutide, which makes Ozempic and Wegovy, will go off patent. And India has a famous industry that can make low-cost versions of these. So India with 84 million obese could benefit from this development in 2026. Within 8 months, another drug, Monjaro, has been on sale in India, and it has become the country's largest selling drugs, even ahead of antibiotics. So the anti-obesity drug is the drug of 2026 for India. Of course, the future is really unknowable. But one thing is clear, is that India is on the track towards good economic growth and has shown geopolitical resiliency, which will stand us in good stead in the coming year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have got a message from Professor Kontapalli that he is joining. So in the meantime, I think we will go ahead. He can be invited later. Dr. Awad, you are next. You have a lot of things on our platter. You have Israel, Hamas, Israel, Iran, Israel, Syria. You have got what will happen in Gaza in 26 of all the plans of President Trump for the administration and the new setup. Over to you.
Thank you very much for having me with such distinguished speakers. And I'm happy to talk on two issues which has really shaped the 2025. One is the public speaking of Israel, of a greater Israel, that is speaking of from the Euphrates to Nile. Irrespective of the Arab or the world, the international community, that these are countries with people. And now Israel talk only of greater Israel, which includes Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Palestine, and also 1/3 of Saudi Arabia and Sinai Peninsula. And having said that, I would say the second part, which is more important, is the declaration of recognizing the Somaliland by Israel as an independent land, which is a clear indication that Israel to declare itself as a Jewish state in the region cannot survive with 7 million Palestinians. So the talk of expelling the Palestinian into another land is the best option for Israel at the moment, is the Somaliland, because there is a failed government and there is a government, very weak government in that particular part of the world. And that will give definitely Israel the more ambitious plan of the strategic implementing strategic objective of creating a greater Israel at one side, and also tightening the nose on the Egyptian in particular, especially in the Sinai Peninsula, and also on the Red Sea of the Saudi Arabia. And fragmentation of the Arab world is very much on the card, whether it is in Yemen, whether it's in Syria or Egypt, or maybe tomorrow Saudi Arabia. So therefore, the danger for the Arab security framework has been always at its worst, because none of the Arab country is taking these threats very serious, because it's a very weakened Arab world and interfighting continue till date. So therefore, the situation in the Middle East remain very volatile, and Israel already continued, despite the truce that have been created by President Trump, and he was able to halt the Israeli assault in full swing against the Palestinian, whether it's in Gaza Strip or whether it is in the West Bank. What we are witnessing now, a continuous firing, a continuous targeting of Palestinian in Gaza Strip, completing obliteration of what has remained of the Palestinian territories in Gaza by the Israelis under the occupation and the green zone, on the yellow zone line, where they're still occupying Gaza, and 50% of that is totally destroyed by the Israelis. There is no live food. There is no way of survival, no water, no food, nothing to take any shelter, except all this tent, which has been soaked by water, and people are dying of hunger and famine inside those and cold waves that been overtaking that region. These are the issues there. The second part, where the Israeli government has given Netanyahu has given the right-wing coalition the free hand in the West Bank. Now you see what's happening in the West Bank. We talked about it last time, that the Israelis are willing to annex the West Bank, or now I'd consider it a part of the Jewish states. There are questions now of remain of Palestinians in that region, what they will do with them. There are more than 150,000 Palestinians have been internally displaced in those particular area. There have also been many of the Palestinians being killed, and many of them also has been taken into custody. And we have seen more than 1,200 Palestinians killed in West Bank, apart from what happened in Gaza. More than 70,000 have been killed. But the situation remained volatile, as I said, and Israel will continue with this policy of expansion, of annexing all the lands, because this is the only remaining part of Palestine that there will be no two-state solution that the whole world has been talking about. So these are the issues, which is we are looking at it from the Israeli eyes, because everything was dominant is the Israelis' actions in this part of the world. They attacked 8 countries during the 2025, from Malta to Tunisia, to Iran, to Qatar, to Syria, to Jordan, to Lebanon, to Iraq. And they have not left. They have not left any of these countries without an attack. And they wanted to tell the Arab and the rest of the world that there is no border. All this artificial border created by the Arab world is nothing but a Sykes-Picot, as the American envoy Barack was saying in an interview, that there is no question of Arab countries, independent Arab states, so never consider them as an independent state, but just a CEO of an Arab sheikhdom living on barrels of oil for the American. So I think these are the issues we need to see, and to see what will be the next focus of Israel. Israel will be looking at Lebanon as the next war, then followed by maybe Turkey, because now there is a change of perceptions of the political Islam, and creating what is a new called Abraham Islam, which is the Israelis trying to integrate itself into the region. But however, Israel does not feel that to be integrated in the Middle East, actually, as people may think that Abraham Accord may invite many of the Arab countries. Israel never wanted to be integrated on the region anyway. Israel wanted to remain the dominant force politically, militarily, and economically. And that's what they're doing with the American in that region. So therefore, Israel will remain as a colonial enclave that had been created by the colonial power in that part of the world. And I think the second phase of the colonization will continue. And the regions is definitely at the verge of reviving some of the Islamist forces that only will be, proximate to American policy and to the Israelis. If they are parting from the Israeli objective or the American, they will definitely remove them, as they have brought them into the helm of power inside Syria or in expanding into the region. The security doctrine of Israel have changed from the defensive into more offensive, and none of the Arab countries, including Iraq, including Syria, including Jordan, including Saudi Arabia, should have any kind of a risk for the future of Israel. Therefore, dismembering and dismantling of the popular forces in Iraq is one of the prime objectives of Israel, followed by the Iranian, where they are already creating a fear phobia among the Americans and the West, that they are having the ballistic missile that can reach even the United States, as Netanyahu is trying to sell the story to the American. So he had the reason and objective to attack Iran. And I think the meeting tonight or today in the United States between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu will also address the issues of the regional war. I'll address the issue whether Israel will go for the second phase of the ceasefire in Gaza, and what will be the future of the 2.5 million Palestinians living in Gaza and the rest of the Palestinians living in the territories. Is the part of the cake given to the Israelis by United States is to attack at West Bank or to take on Iran or to take on Lebanon? I think Netanyahu have so much of the cake to have, and President Trump will succumb to the pressure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Abad. Over to you, Talmiz. Talmiz Ahmad. What happened to Talmiz Ahmad?
Unmute yourself.
I unmuted myself.
Okay.
The implications of the 2-year conflict in Gaza and all across West Asia are still very uncertain. But 2 points that I would make straight away is that there has been two integrated security landscapes have emerged. One is east to west, all the way from Pakistan to the Mediterranean. This landmark is an integrated security landscape because one end and the other, they are impacting developments they are having an impact all across the region. The second is the north-south security landscape that goes from Turkey up to Somalia. And this is also, particularly, it takes into account Turkey's role in the Red Sea, and Egyptian role, the Turkish role, the Iranian role, and the Israeli role in the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa. This is the second security landscape. So these are the two most important aspects in terms of geopolitics, in terms of regional geopolitics. I am not suggesting to you that they are mutually exclusive, because you have similar players all across. You have, for example, UAE is involved both with the East-West and the North-South. But for convenience, I have divided it into these two arenas. What does all this mean? Now, if you look at the region is in extreme churn, because many of the givens of the security order no longer are valid. For example, the United States is hardly seen by any major player as a credible security provider in the region. And Israel is now seen as the principal security threat in the region. So many things that are now likely to happen take into account these two factors, which had not been as significant earlier as they have now become. So what does this mean really? This means basically that the region, seriously insecure, particularly along the two landscapes that I have mentioned, would be looking at alignments. And these alignments, I will share my own views about what is happening in terms of these alignments. I'm still using the word alignment. They are not alliances. They are very tentative first steps. They are all at a very nascent stage. So I'm looking at one important alignment that is likely to occur is Turkey, Iran, and Pakistan. And the second alignment will be Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Pakistan. Now, you will straight away see that Pakistan is a common factor in both the alignments. It's a remarkable turnaround for this pariah country. Alongside, remember that both these alignments, you will see a very major presence of China, possibly alongside Russia. What they will do and what shape things will take, it stays to be seen, and we can discuss it later. There is a third alignment which is also emerging and has possibly got a lot of resonance: Israel, UAE, and India. So these are the three alignments that I see that are taking shape today, and that these are all, as I said, very, very tentative steps. And obviously, with the third one, the principal role player will be the United States. So these are China with Russia, along with, as I mentioned, two alignments which are taking shape in front of us. Pakistan as a common factor, and in the third one, obviously, India on the other side, and UAE. I mentioned UAE because UAE is one of the most extraordinary players today in the region. And not they control discourse very tightly, and therefore not enough light has been thrown on what the UAE has been doing over the last 5 years. It is the most active role player in the region economically, in terms of maritime security, and in terms of geopolitics. The UAE's footprint is to be seen all across Yemen, along the ports of Yemen, Socotra, Perim Island that controls the entry into the Bab al Mandeb. Then you have across in the Horn of Africa. It has also built very substantial ties with Ethiopia. And Ethiopia has now reached out to Somaliland, supported by the UAE. So, keeping an eye on the UAE as a very important factor in regional dynamics, not yet clearly spelled out because the literature is simply not there. So one is, as at this stage, attempting to sort of guess what is likely to happen. And obviously, given India's very close ties with the UAE on the one hand and Israel on the other, and UAE is itself being so close to Israel, I see the basis for a substantial relationship right there. With regard to Palestine, we are not going to see any significant change. I think Mr. Wael Awad has already dilated on that. Situation could get much worse, and I don't need to repeat that point again. But I would like to emphasize to you that we in India should not take our eyes off the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa. This is an extremely important waterway. It carries 12% of global trade. India's $200 billion of trade pass through the Red Sea. It is a very sensitive area. It is a conflict zone on both sides of the coastline. It has also, with regard to the African side, you have very fragile states. Many of them have been in conflict continuously. And therefore, I had personally welcomed PM's visit to Ethiopia. But I am not sure with regard to the geopolitics whether enough attention is being paid there. I would also emphasize here that if we have Mahasagar's principal role should be to focus on this waterway now, the Gulf of Aden and the Bab al Mandeb and the Horn of Africa. This is going to be very significant. What the Israelis have done, recognizing Somaliland, is an extraordinarily dramatic development. Somaliland has been seeking independence for a very long time. It has been denied this independence. It has had presidential elections, parliamentary elections. It has everything except recognition from the world. Israel is the first country in the world to have recognized it, but UAE has been working with Somaliland for a very long time, and now it has pulled in Ethiopia as well. Ethiopia has logistical connectivity from Addis Ababa up to Berbera, both in terms of railway, etc., and it needs a new outlet onto the Red Sea. And therefore, we are looking at a very major churn that is likely in the Horn of Africa, which could also jeopardize shipping through the Red Sea quite significantly. So we are looking at major developments taking place all across our region, many of which would be impinging on India's security.
Thank you, Talmiz. You have introduced so many new dimensions to discussion. We will follow them up later on. Now, I'm still waiting for Kondapalli. So in the meantime, I will go back to my friend Gurjeet. You have so many things on your platter. Go ahead. Unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Thank you. So I can't obviously touch everything you put on my plate, but let me try. So what Africa needs is justice. Justice in climate, justice in skills, justice in the economy. And what it gets is being treated like a strategic periphery by all the big powers. Nobody wants to give them any more money. USAID is shut down, AGOA is shut down, BRI money is not coming, Europeans are cutting their aid. So the theme for 2025 for the African Union was justice for Africa through reparations. So they've gone back to colonialism and say, let me try and extract money from there. This is the dire strait Africa is in. African institutions are not working. The African Union now nobody cares about. The ECOWAS has split between the revolts in the Sahel and the mainstream. IGAD, and Talmiz has already spoken a lot about Israel, Somaliland, the UAE. So IGAD had a meeting yesterday, and though they have said they do not recognize any recognition by anybody of Somaliland, Ethiopia and Kenya played a role to dilute that. So there is a division over there, again perpetrated by outsiders. Now, when you look at the biggest problem for the last few years in Africa was France. But with the desecration of France from Central Africa, as Talmiz has rightly said, the bad boy in Africa is the UAE. Wherever there is trouble, the UAE is there. We all talk of Palestine, but Sudan, 150,000 people have died. UAE and Saudi Arabia contesting with two people for no particular reason. They can create the peace, but they create the war. Now, where the Eritreans were concerned, UAE was once with Eritrea. Now they are with Ethiopia. Ethiopia was with Eritrea. Now they are on their own. Basically, the UAE is trying to reach the Red Sea either through Eritrean port of Assab or Berbera in Somaliland, because Djibouti kicked them out some years ago, handing over the port of Dorale to China. That is the love that UAE has for Somaliland. The British have been looking for recognizing Somaliland from 1991, and the Americans are okay with it. But nobody wants to give them a chance because the Horn of Africa has had two effective secessions, Eritrea and South Sudan, and both have not been successful. They have become quagmires. So people don't want to give Somaliland a chance. Ethiopia tried and faced much opprobrium. And now Ethiopia, UAE angle, and now the Israelis have come in. But this is all Red Sea politics impinging on Africa. This is not what Africa needs. You also asked me to talk about the G20. So India brought African Union into the G20, giving them a seat on the high table. The United States is withdrawing the seat of South Africa during their presidency. So this contradiction continues. This is because neither Russia nor China nor the United States sees Africa as a partner. They see them as strategically important periphery, who are important for new supply chains for critical minerals and the energy transition. Otherwise, Africa, no, they are not interested in African democracy. They're not interested in African development. All that is gone. Now, democracy in Africa. So many elections in 2025, most of them led to problems for Africa, not solutions. There are coups, counter coups, people changing the constitution to continue ruling, rigging of elections, except for Botswana, Malawi, a few like that. Most of them have been a very bad example. One point regarding Europe. I think Europe for the United States and China is also a strategic periphery. They don't have a composite use for Europe anymore. both have a view, like a peripheral view, that China wants Europe for the market, America wants Europe to be their NATO partner, but they don't treat them like a partner. The biggest problem in Europe is the rise of the right wing. Now, the right wing is supported by the United States. But if they win, most of their ideas are to make up with Russia. So that falls in place with what the Americans want. So I think this picture, that a rise of the right wing probably coming to power in some cases with American backing, will lead to Europe reopening relations with Russia. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gurjeet. You have minced no words and flagged so many new issues which must be thought about. I think now I will turn to my friend, Dr. Ambassador TCA Raghavan. Pakistan has been mentioned many times. Then you have Afghanistan. Then you have got so many angles of Pakistan and Field Marshal Munir. Over to you, Raghavan.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. Let me begin by just one small point about what I think were the major issues that we confronted in 2025. And I say this because these will continue in 2026. The first was our immediate neighborhood, which is South Asia. The second was China. And the third was the managing of a very difficult relationship with the United States, for which we were not really prepared. Now, in South Asia, there are, of course, different components, but certainly what happened in Bangladesh played a major role in how we viewed the situation to our northeast, and Myanmar also comes into that. Then there was the drama of the events of Nepal, and finally, of course, Pakistan. Now, all of this put together meant that South Asia was in 2025 and in 2026 is going to remain one of the principal factors in our external relationships. I think specifically on Pakistan, obviously, Operation Sindoor is something which we have to take into consideration while looking at what happened in the India-Pakistan interface. As was pointed out earlier by Manoj Joshi, the impact of Operation Sindoor on the threat which emerges, the terrorist threat which exists, is indeterminate. We cannot say that it has made a substantive difference to the threat that we face, or indeed has deterred Pakistan from further such provocations. What Sindoor also brought out is a more difficult issue, which is how do you manage very difficult neighborhood relationships in the absence of strategic communications, especially when the traditional external communicators have started playing a more unpredictable kind of role, as we witnessed with the United States during Operation Sindoor. The larger question which we face as a fallout of Sindoor is how to convey to the wider international community that we don't want third-party intervention in India-Pakistan issues, when what concerns them is the nuclear flashpoint and the absence of strategic communications between India and Pakistan. So how long we will be able to persist with this position is anybody's guess. Now, the other consequence of Operation Sindoor was obviously internally in Pakistan itself. Because the question which emerged in 2025 was as to how the Pakistan military or the Pakistan army, with the surrogate or with the civilian front which it has, suddenly from being in the doghouse all through 2022, 2023, 2024, suddenly became a top dog and was able to bring about a major constitutional amendment which which transfers power and authority to the executive and to the military in a way which was not anticipated even a few years earlier. Now, this obviously happened for two reasons. Firstly, the enormous denting which the image of the Pakistan military had taken in 2022 and 2023, that denting was repaired by this narrative which the Pakistan army could very successfully spin, that it had stood up to India and had faced India down. Simultaneously, there was an increase in the extent of international acceptability which Pakistan was receiving, or which Pakistan had. And this was, again, as was pointed out earlier by Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, from being a pariah state, which was very evident from 2019 till 2023-24. Suddenly it became the flavor of the month.
You listen to your podcast, you can take my video.
It became the flavor of the month. And we saw evidence of that in the Saudi-Pakistan agreement, and there's other evidence for that also. So the point is that as 2025 ends, we face an even more difficult situation in Pakistan, because you have a country which is driven by a sense of vindication about its role, and this greater international acceptability, the dramatic improvement in the relations with the US has further empowered that sense of vindication. I think looking ahead, as I said, the main challenges which we are going to face in 2026 are going to be in South Asia, and the situation in Bangladesh and Myanmar remains deeply worrying. I think while we seem to be having a very good approach to larger international and extra-regional issues, in South Asia itself, we seem to be suffering from a lack of a regional narrative. And in the absence of a regional narrative, our instinct is to securitize relationships. And when faced with difficulties, we try to follow the Pakistan script. And that, most unfortunately, is what is happening in Bangladesh today, and the consequences of that are going to be indeterminate. I think we also face a lot of challenges with the US and China, but I've crossed my 7 minutes according to my stopwatch, so I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raghavan. I see Professor Kondapalli, you have joined. There is some Galaxy J8. This is your email, Dr. Kondapalli. Please unmute yourself. Go ahead. We have been waiting for your comment on China. Unmute yourself. Yes. Unmute.
Thank you very much. My apologies for the delay.
Okay.
Good evening, Ambassador Kumar, and good evening to all the distinguished panelists and viewers. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on the China in 2025 and what does that mean for India in 2026. Broadly, four things that I want to put across. Number one is the Busan meeting between United States and China on October 31st. That has actually created a structural dynamic recently in the not just US-China relations, but also in terms of the power transition. I do not think the Busan meeting has resulted in substantial gains for China, but this is one of those events in the challenger and the dominant power fighting with each other on specific issues, and in this case, the rare earth metals. As you all know, since January and more specifically in April, there were the tariffs that were imposed on China, 145%. And these were now lowered to 10%, in addition to the rare earth metal ban being lifted on many American companies. And the US also agreed to supply the H200 advanced chips, and also the issues related to the bilateral relations between China and the United States. So Busan meeting has been very substantial. Even though Trump has not lowered the tariffs on India, we are now from August 27th, we are having 50% tariffs. 25% of these are retaliatory, and 25% because we are importing from Russia, the oil factor. So the Busan meeting has come as a major development between United States and China. So this is number one, which means that the Tianjin meeting between Prime Minister Modi, President Xi Jinping, and President Putin, that photo op is important in the sense of the multipolarity, etc. So Busan meeting had substantial impact globally, and mainly in atmospherics right now, because this is part of the challenger versus the dominant power. And second factor I would like to highlight is the one related to the Taiwan Straits exercises that we are now currently witnessing. There is, since evening today, the Chinese have conducted massive exercises off Taiwan Straits, and this is quite significant because the Pentagon paper came out, National Security Strategy, which suggests that the Chinese effort to launch an invasion is becoming a reality, and PLA 100th anniversary is in 2027, and so there are the preparatory works that the PLA is doing across the Taiwan Straits. So this is another dynamic which India needs to consider, and India had stated, MEA had stated about the peace in and stability in the Taiwan Straits. So it is getting animated, the Taiwan-related issue. In 2026, we will have to make some major announcements regarding Taiwan. For those who are not familiar with this, in 2007, India conducted a naval exercise along with United States, Japan, Australia, Singapore, and Israel. And we had some position on the Straits of Malacca, where China has been importing a lot of oil. Last year, about 520 million tons of oil. So there is a scenario building in India that we would be concerned about any Taiwan invasion. That was in 2007. And we do conduct unilateral, bilateral, multilateral exercises in the South China Sea. And the Taiwan Straits is one area where we would be dragged into in the near future. So this is the second factor that we need to keep in mind. The third factor is India-China relations, specifically since the Kazan meeting in 2024, October 23rd, we have had some kind of normalization. Disengagement and patrolling has been carried out, but no de-escalation and de-induction. More than a year passed, we have not had these two between India and China, which basically then means the direct flights, visas, etc. are more cosmetic rather than anything concrete in the bilateral relations. So 2026, we are likely to muddle through in India-China relations, more in positive way, but muddling through the whole year. Because the tensions are also rising in 2-3 areas. And Indian Ocean, for example, China has been sending 8 to 9 submarines a year to the region. And there are also surveillance ships which are sent to Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, and Indian Ocean. So there is the concern that the Andaman Nicobar has highlighted, and hence the 2026 is likely to be, if not stormy, at least to be watched because of the tension that may arise between India and China. So that is the third factor that I would like to highlight. And prognosis for 2026 quickly. Since I'm running out of time, allotted time, I would like to say that the while trade has increased to $134 billion between India and China, this has also become a major concern for us because of the trade deficit. In the last 20 years, there has been a trade deficit of $1.6 trillion between India and China in favor of China. And last year alone, we had $99 billion of trade deficit. And so this is creating some concern. For the viewers who are not aware of this, the Indian President Pratibha Patil visited China in 2010, and she suggested 4 ways to address the trade deficit. One is in terms of the investment in India, but the total Chinese investment in India is $3.2 billion for an economy of $19 trillion. So that is an issue that is being taken up. Second is in terms of manufacturing centers in Pune and Ahmedabad, but those have not been observed by the Chinese. The third is in terms of India and China working together for the third market, say Africa, South America, etc., but that has also not been taken up. Fourth is in terms of the Chinese importing more goods from India, but that has become a major problem with China not opening up its market to India. So these 4 issues that President Patil raised have not been addressed even after 15 years. So that is likely to be taken up because China today has become a developed economy under the WTO format last month, and no longer it is treated as a developing country. So, which means the subsidies and others have to be withdrawn. But China has also launched a lot of anti-dumping duties and also complained at WTO on the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign for subsidizing semiconductors and others. So something is brewing up on the economic front. Finally, I would like to say that the border issue is still going to be an issue, and so let me stop here. Not so rosy picture for 2026 for India-China relations.
Okay, you
Thank
said
you very
mother
much.
too, and then no rosy picture. Then going back to Pratibha Patil, where I am not sure current government has too much love lost for that. I turn to my friend Rajiv Bhatia. He already knows what to do with his precious time. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you very much, Surendra. You know, from the time when we studied together for masters some 5 decades back, your standards remain understandably very exacting. And I should begin with a quotation of Mark Twain, who said, if you want me to give you a 2-hour presentation, I can do it now. But if you want me to speak only for 7 minutes, I need 2 weeks to prepare for it. I want to assure you that I have my watch here and I will try to finish very much in less than 7 minutes. I have 4 or 5 topics to cover, and I'll do it in a racy manner. But the major topic is Indo-Pacific.
Okay.
I think to those of us who are ardent advocates, interpreters, and writers of the Indo-Pacific, the painful reality is that this region has lost its prominence. It was the hot region in the world during the period 2007 to 2019. And then something happened which continuously eroded that importance. I'm referring to COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, the Gaza tragedy and the multiple conflicts in West Asia, people simply began to forget about the Indo-Pacific. And yet, at the same time, we being here in this region and having invested so heavily in the Indo-Pacific strategy, we would not let it go. And then Mr. Trump arrived in the White House, and the moment India-US relations began to go down, I think that erosion of the importance of Indo-Pacific became painfully clear to all of us. Finally, when the Quad Summit did not take place and was deferred indefinitely, it was clear that this is a road we may have to review. So this is where we are at the end of 25, looking at 26. I would basically suggest that we should not remain emotionally, so heavily invested in the Indo-Pacific. If there is indeed a turnaround in the India-US relations in the next few weeks or months, by all means, something will happen positively. But India and its strategic partners and planners should begin to look at the alternative pathways. And I think as I'm hearing the fellow panelists, it's becoming more and more clear that that pathway will have several elements. Naturally, we will have to focus more on relations with Russia. We will have to work harder on Europe. We will have to make sure that we work our way with Asia minus China. We also must ensure that there is no conflict with China. And I agree with Raghavan, we have to work for some kind of stability in South Asia. We just can't keep talking about wars with Pakistan, Bangladesh, or anybody else. If that continues, then I'm afraid we are in serious trouble. The central issue for 26, especially in the beginning, will be whether we can bring about some improvement in India-US relations. If that does not happen, then obviously we will be on a choppy sea and we will have to find a way. We will have to discover inner strengths to move forward from there. Moving now to the second quick topic, Myanmar, since you had flagged this, I think this can be really dealt with in 3 sentences. The world wants the generals to give democracy to its people, and they are doing so with vengeance. What they're offering is exactly what they offered back in 2010-11. This is called disciplined democracy. Now, they can take it or they can leave it. The choice is disciplined democracy or naked military dictatorship. And obviously, between the two, some kind of limited democracy has to be accepted. As far as India's policy is concerned, the policy is largely right. It's a policy with 2 aspects, and we know all about it. I also want to touch briefly, Surendra, about G20. I think when we invested heavily in G20 presidency, it seemed to us that we were on the right path. It seemed to us that we were on the right path. But now, 3 or 4 years later, when we managed virtually to convert G20 into a platform for Global South, we saw that the correction is now taking place. The US is taking G20 back to the essential economic issues. And when US decided to use a hammer and virtually expelled South Africa, there was not a whimper from the Global South powers. And this is something we need to note. We turned suddenly very pragmatic. And if this is what our inclinations are, then I would say that this experience of G20 has some lessons for our BRICS presidency. And BRICS presidency is going to be even more challenging because Mr. Trump simply does not like BRICS. and we are now the president. So in a way, what I'm suggesting is that maybe we should go a little bit low-key on BRICS in contrast to what we had done with G20. Else, the basic aim of improving India-US relations may not really be achieved. In the end, in the last 1 minute, allow me to say something about Africa, on which Gurjeet has already spoken eloquently. I agree with him. It has been a tough year for Africa in terms of security, in terms of governance, and in terms of economy. Africa has lost the kind of international attention it was getting before the COVID period. And I think we should be very clear that India's Africa policy needs to be reviewed. We invested so heavily on Global South. There is no Global South without a successful approach towards Africa. So my last comment essentially here is, I plead for the powers that be to host a conclave and discuss and assess India's Africa policy for 2026 and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all the participants. You have eloquently shared your views. Now, whatever I had to say, I had said yesterday in my article that has appeared in Hindi also. For me, 25, the man of the year was Donald J. Trump, and he will remain the same next year also. Whether you go to Middle East, whether you go to Europe, whether you go to China, everywhere you can't really lose sight of who is calling the shot. We call it multipolar world. There's one person who decides to bomb Iran, he goes ahead and bombs it. He comes to Sikhism. We have seen what happened there. He was the host, he was the MC, he was the chief guest, and treating the European leader as if they were kids from some kindergarten school. Now, the era of those Humpies and Howdy Modi and Namaste Trump are over. They are hard decisions to be taken. We have been negotiating for trade tariff. Only in between, sometime we have been hearing these softeners or sweeteners like my friend Modi and Great India and Diwali on the White House, and we have some kind of references which are laudatory. But then is dangled the G2 carrot China. We will have to see what happens to that. I think the turbulence and the disruption which happened 25 will continue 26 from the US. Only two things can change. If in 26 Ukraine-Russian conflict can be brought to an end, and Donald Trump does receive Nobel Prize, I'm sure he will be much mellower person, and he might be going easy on all other issues. But the other factor, 26, they are going to have midterm polls in USA. And nobody knows what happens. Many people predict the Republican Party is going to lose many seats. That might perhaps have some sobering effect. We are also going to have elections in India domestically, 3-4 states. And by all accounts, as of today, the BJP seems to be going stronger, and the opposition is getting weaker in spite of ravaging all the Samvidhan Yatra or the boat chori. And many people predict that Mamta Didi might be in for Waterloo of her career, but one doesn't know. These things are unpredictable. The only person who could stood against Trump, and in a way, I think he, for me, the runner-up in men of the year 25 is Zohran Mamdani. The youngest man, the first person of Asian origin, and the first person, social democrat, whatever you call him, and first Muslim. He became the mayor in 100 years, in spite of all the opposition really orchestrated by President Trump. And then he go to White House and he convert President Trump as one of his admirers. It's a great achievement. Now, I would like to take advantage of some attendees here. Is Ajay Basaria still there? Ajay, are you there? Ajay Basaria.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yeah, that you have really have a tome of 1,000 pages on Pakistan. So after hearing T.C. Raghava, I would like to give you opportunity to add something in 2-3 minutes. Ajay.
Sure. So, I agree largely with what Raghavan said, but just one broader point. What we are realizing is that the instability in South Asia, and many of your speakers said this, can spill over into India. And we're seeing this with Bangladesh, with the threat of both spillover of violence, spillover of refugees, and it's true of Pakistan. So Op Sindoor in that context was, Asim Munir wanting to consolidate his domestic regime. He's got a double promotion as Field Marshal and then as CDF, thanks to Pahalgam, which he mounted, and from his point of view, successfully, because there was a successful 4-day conflict where Pakistan could tell itself and tell the world that it can stand up to India even in conventional conflict. So I think in 2026, the danger of this instability in Pakistan, if it mounts again, will again mean another terrorist attack in case Asim Munir finds that useful, for the reasons that Raghavan and others mentioned, that one, it consolidates his regime, two, it gives expression to his anger for what he sees happening in Balochistan and ascribed to India, and three, by being emboldened by Trump and Saudi Arabia and the couple of alignments that Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad talked about. So I think the dangers and the risks have gone up. If he consolidates successfully and becomes more stable, we perhaps will not have that eventuality. But I think the dangers have gone up. And I would repeat what Raghavan said. Our policy of not engaging in any strategic communication with a nuclear neighbor, while saying that we cannot brook any third party interference, is something that cannot sustain indefinitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Raghavan, Ambassador Sibal has not joined. Would you mind to share some of your thoughts in 2-3 minutes about India-Russia relations or Russia's position overall? Because Trump was dangling carrot of he can be part of G8 instead of G7, but you see his view change every week depending on whether Putin is good friend or Putin is somebody whom we should really find difficult to persuade. Over to you, Raghavan.
Russia was always beyond my pay grade. So maybe Ajay or someone else can speak on it. But I will, since you gave me the chance, may I just add one more point? It concerns Pakistan, but it's very interesting that in the past, the role to increase the authority and greater stability, the route for the Pakistan military was always paved by the judiciary. This time, very interestingly, for the 27th Amendment, it was paved by the political parties. And the two political parties which had always been in opposition to the military. And I can't think of a reasonable explanation for this, except in terms of the narrative which the Pakistan military spun over Operation Sindoor and the vindication it got from the international community with regard to Operation Sindoor. I thought it's a very significant kind of change. But on Russia, maybe somebody else, either Ajay or Talmiz or someone else could talk.
Okay, thank you. Before I request Talmiz or other two on Russia, Rajiv, you were at one time BSM. The Bangladesh is burning or is going to have elections next week. Somebody comes out from somewhere after 17 years, he gets huge crowd and he registers himself voter, and maybe who knows, he might be next Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Would you like to share something Bangladesh for a few minutes? Rajiv.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Suren. I think I'm very happy that the stepchild of South Asia does get occasionally a little bit of attention, in comparison to Pakistan, especially when Bangladesh tries to pose as mini Pakistan. Indeed, I think I'll be very candid. Some thinkers and commentators have been pushing a line on Bangladesh, which is probably in the long term rather injurious. I think we have to recognize that it is an independent sovereign country. We cannot run Bangladesh sitting from Delhi. Therefore, the governance of Bangladesh has to be left to the political forces there. The only thing we can do is to choose to deal with some people and not deal with the others. Now, in this case, as you said specifically, Tariq Rahman's arrival is a relatively positive development. Obviously, given his background, his parentage, his father was the president, his mother was the prime minister, and he has lived in the West over a long period. He's a younger man. Certainly, he would still be dependent on the Islamic forces to a degree, but he hopefully would be much better than the other alternatives, whether it is a Jamaat government or it is the Yunus interim government. And therefore, we should give some elbow room to him. We should place some realistic expectations on him. And therefore, what I'm trying to say is that this business of pushing Hasina card, all the way is not very helpful to our interests. I think we have to become more pragmatic. We have to become less emotional. We have to become realistic on Bangladesh. Otherwise, like Raghavan and Ajay, we all will have sleepless nights even about Bangladesh.
Okay, thank you. Now, Talmeen, may I request you to share your comment about Russia, India-Russia relations, Russia's overall sort of activity, whether Ukraine or elsewhere? Talmeen, are you still there? I think he is still there.
Yeah. I'm not an authority on Russia, but I have approached Russia
we don't need authority.
Yeah, primarily through the prism of West Asia. But looking at what has happened in Ukraine, you cannot but recall going back to the 1990s that for the West, the Cold War never ended. And they were very clear from day one that Russia was going to be subordinated to the Western, and that the old animosity that that Western Europe and now the United States alongside has for Russia has to be sustained. And hence you saw the steady expansion of NATO eastwards. What they found in Putin was a civilizational challenge. That means he has come forward with an alternative view of the conflict where he mobilizes support on the basis of civilization. At the same time, obviously, Russia and China have become a formidable alliance of their own. And you have seen Western commentators had been saying from the very beginning that it's not going to be sustained. It's a fair, it is a kind of short-term arrangement, etc. And it's not going to. But the point is that Western aggressiveness, finally culminating with the Ukraine war, has ensured that their relationship remains solid. What has now happened with Donald Trump is that you find that the Europeans who thought that they were an integral part of the West and that it would be the Americans who would play the lead role, find themselves suddenly isolated. So that now they have to take the principal burden of confronting Russia has come on to the Europeans, and we could discuss how well it's going to go. As of now, the Europeans are shell-shocked, and it is not clear that they have either the capacity or the intellectual, or the strategic or the strategic manpower to understand how they are going to cope with it. You also have the rise of the extreme right wing. You have populist movements and extreme right wing movements. Not all of them want to have this confrontation. As far as India is concerned, Russia will remain a very major partner for us. But if you don't mind, having said all this, and much of this is well known to the August gathering, if I could take the liberty of saying that I have listened to my colleagues with great attention, they have spoken very soberly and sensibly about what has happened and what could happen. They painted a picture that, and the principal lesson that comes out from these remarks is that the approach we have had today with regard to areas of crucial importance for India in terms of its strategic space will not work anymore. that we've had a certain opportunity. Today, what you have to do, and this is, I think, become obvious, starting with our neighborhood, that you have to have fundamentally new approaches. And I think that that Rajiv made a very important point, and very forcefully, that you cannot run the politics of your neighbors, however small they might be. We have really done wrong by our interests and by their interests in terms of crucial countries that are our neighborhood. So number one, I would say, take a fresh look at South Asia. Unless we get our own intimate house in order, we are going nowhere. Secondly, take a look at West Asia. So much has been happening in the region, and we seem to be adrift. So if someone had asked me, said, your strategic autonomy has become strategic drift, I have to agree, because there is no sense of purpose. The shell shock of Bangladesh on the one hand and the United States on the other has left us totally paralyzed in terms of effective decision making as far as our interest is concerned. So
Okay,
I think the message that you must give, don't get embarrassed, Surinder, just listen. The message that this panel has given should be listened to with deep interest, and seriousness, that you cannot run the matters as you have been doing in the lackadaisical, directionless way.
Thank you. We are not Economic Forum Davos. Nobody is going to listen to my message on anyway. I'm sure somebody in South Block will listen to. Now listen, I have got only 7 minutes. I will give 1 minute each of you. Make 3 predictions. Stick your neck out. What will happen in 2026? Starting with Manoj Joshi. 1 minute. Manoj, unmute yourself.
Yeah.
1 minute. You have 3 predictions.
The 3 predictions is that Mr. Trump will lose the midterm election, number 1. Number 2, the BJP will probably do well in the state assembly. 5 state assembly elections are taking place, of which 3 are non-BJP states. So the BJP, I think, will do well there. And number 3 is that the China will consolidate its role, having set back the United States. The Chinese will consolidate that effort further in the coming year.
Okay, fine. Professor Kondapalli, 3 predictions for 26. Professor Kondapalli, unmute yourself. He didn't seem to believe in. Okay, Dr. Awad, your predictions for 26.
Thank you very much. I think what will we see is the solidified to 2025 in the Middle East complexity is by the conflicts will persist without any definite resolutions. The diplomatic efforts will show more activity but encounter the structure of obstacles. And the regional architecture like Abraham Accord continue to evolve under public opinion and security pressures. And the viability of two-state solution and meaningful Palestinian governance reform remain critical yet challenging objective. And there will be more war front opening, whether it is Iran, where the Netanyahu is selling the story to Trump today, or whether will be conquering the south of Lebanon again and reaching to the water of Litani as Israeli plan. That's my prediction.
Tell me, over to you. 3 predictions. Talmij Ahmed, unmute yourself.
I have already made my what I anticipate will happen in West Asia. Therefore, I would counsel rather than predict. India should get its act together. The kind of leisurely approach that we have, कि सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा, we don't have to do anything. सब कुछ ठीक. This is not happening. The region, literally South Asia and West Asia and Southeast Asia, Central Asia, the crucial spaces that are important for us, we are not present in any significant manner. We have also lost a moral compass. We used to talk the language of the global South up to the G20. The minute the G20 summit got over, we moved on. I would say very seriously that we must now get into the business of thinking through issues, having a vision, having a strategy, and trying to work through what is possible in terms of safeguarding our interests. Finally, let me tell you, the domestic approach has to be re-examined. This total focus on elections and elections alone, in absence of any serious political policy at home, economic policy, social policy, none of this, these are the crucial areas. Today, I'm going to say something which will be very hurtful for many people. Lot of people who have very high regard for India, particularly in the global south, are today seriously disenchanted, including some of our friends in West Asia. This is a time to ring the alarm bell and to say, look, I am ready for a revamp. Otherwise, we are going to be an absentee as far as serious platforms where there will be discussions about how the
Okay.
new world order should be shaped. Will be
Okay.
we will be an absentee partner.
Okay. Gurjeet, 1 minute, 3 prediction. Gurjeet. Are you there? Gurjeet is gone, I think. Okay. Raghavan.
Well, my first prediction or assessment is that even, and it's a big even if we come to a satisfactory trade agreement with the US, the headwinds with US will continue, and its somewhat unreliable and jaundiced approach to India will remain. Secondly, I think I don't see any signs that there is going to be any change in our postures with regard to neighborhood countries and their domestic political opinion, rather than some amount of clinical approach, will drive the agenda. And I think this will have very, very bad consequences with Bangladesh. And these are the two. I don't have a third prediction.
Okay, fine. Rajiv.
Yes, thank you very much, Surendra. Here are my 3 predictions. First of all, with the 2 US-China summits planned in 2026, I expect US-China relations will become stronger. And this is not a good news for India. My second prediction is that most probably the Quad summit will not take place, which means it will very clearly underline the deepening differences between Delhi and Washington. And my third prediction is that for Global South and for India, G20 in 2026 will lose its attractiveness and its importance. We will have to wait for the next presidents, UK and South Korea, to see if they would do the corrections. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My first prediction is Donald Trump will get Nobel Prize in 2026. Hold your breath, but it may come. The second is, in spite of all the things I don't really paint such pessimistic scenario. Given the circumstances, given the difficulties, India has been handling what you call a tight row walk. India, US, India, Russia, India, China, we are doing really well. Nobody can say we have not done well with Gulf countries. Our relations are far, far better than they used to be. Our outreach to Africa has been much more extensive. Yes, our neighborhood, immediate neighborhood, whether Nepal, whether Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, these are the issues in which we have been far, what should I say, unsuccessful. There has to be a lot of more activities, perhaps more accommodation. But thank you very much for all of you to come around on such a time when people are busy partying and sort of doing other things year end. And I wish you all a very, very happy New Year, happy, happening, productive, healthy, successful year to you, your family, your loved ones. Thank you very much. Okay, good night.
Thank you, Surendra. Great job done. All the best. And bye-bye, dear friends. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Excellent
Surendra.
session.
All the best to you.